hello everyone. Hello Ashley, Arpan, Matthias, Adelaide, and hello to everyone in this audience. So I will be your host today. My name is Alice, and I'm part of the marketing team here at CoderPad. Thank you for taking the time to join us as we discuss the tech recruitment trends of the year to come. But that's more than enough from me. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our pros. Today, I'm joined by Ashley Santos, Matthias Schmeisser, and Arpan Javeri. Panelists, do you think you could tell us a little bit about yourselves? Maybe let's start with Ashley, then Matthias, and then Arpan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. My name is Ashley, and I am based in San Francisco, California. I have the privilege to oversee the global recruiting coordination and candidate experience team. And additionally, what our team does is we oversee various hiring programs in close collaboration, with our recruiters. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Matthias?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm from Berlin, Germany. Not as my background might resonate to a different city or a different country. But yeah, I'm Senior Director of Talent Acquisition and Employer Branding at Amnify, which is an IoT connectivity solution company. So we're in the IoT market. It's a deep tech organization, Series B startup. The topics that we are talking about or focused on is skill-based hiring is a big one. So I'm really looking forward to the questions here for people that want to try this out and want to leverage this, but as well as, I have also a team, and we're heavily done some tech recruitment over the last years, and I'm more than happy to see how this has shifted with great insights that we have seen in the report. So I'm more than happy to, share some insights and some learnings.
Yes, great, thanks. Arpan?
Hello, everyone. My name is Arpan Javeri. I run marketing at CoderPad. I've been here for about 2.5 years. I'm a former software engineer turned marketer, and I've been sort of in this space on technical hiring and recruiting for quite some time, and excited to share my perspective and learn from all of you here.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm very happy to have you here today as we dig deeper into the learning of our 2024 tech hiring reports. And actually, just to make sure that everyone has some context on the source of this insight that we'll be discussing, let me share a little bit more about this survey that we ran this past fall. So every January, CoderPad releases a report which is based on insight from this year. It's about 19,000 of developers, recruiters, and hiring managers that are sourced from our community. And the idea behind this report is really to give the tech and recruitment world a better understanding of what it means to be a developer, to work in the tech space, to work with developers, with tech people, and to recruit and to be a recruiter in this market. So on one side, we survey developers on their expectation in a job, their challenges, their skills. On the other side, we ask recruiters, hiring manager about their priorities, their budget, their recruitment process, and expectation for the years to come. And every year, what we have is recurring questions that will highlight evolutions, trends over the years. And also we have new topics that we introduce that are linked to the current context. So for instance, this year, we have introduced AI, some topics around soft skills, management. So Adelaide in the chat will be sharing these reports with all of you again, and that will be the starting point for the discussion of today. Yes. And here you will see that I have already highlighted a few data points that are interesting regarding the perception, importance of soft skills, AI in the tech recruitment process. And that will lead me to my first question for you all. What is really one of the key learning insights that you have drawn from this report, and why? Maybe I'll start with Ashley.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, yeah, I would definitely say how that fact of how AI can help optimize daily work, making many workers more efficient, and as a result, such as communication, critical thinking, and the ability to take and give feedback is really going to be at our center. So those soft skills, and I really enjoyed reading this, especially because having this more as prominent, it's going to really open up the candidate pool for hiring teams. But also, this means that we're going to need some, more like vigorous training around identifying candidates who have these effective soft skills.
Yeah, so I think we will go further into soft skills and AI. So I'm not asking too much right now. I would be also interested in Matthias. What is one of your favorite learning from this? I know you wrote something very detailed on LinkedIn about a lot of learnings that you found interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. I first of all think it's always great to have a look into such reports because there's a lot in there for recruiters to learn about the personas of tech talents. And at the same time, it's not just for recruiters, but also for employer brand professionals, right? How do you understand your persona and how do you attract them? But what makes me really happy and smile is the 78% of developers and the 81% of recruiters that say soft skills are at least as important as hard skills. Why? Because I do think that in the past we were just over indexing on tech skills in general for engineers. And we just believe that the better they are in tech, the better they are as an engineer per se. But I can definitely tell that soft skills are very much important and underestimated by a lot of engineers to grow in their career. And so I'm really, really happy that we are making progress on this.
Yeah, I agree. Arpan, do you have also a key learning that you?
Yeah, I think that the two pieces of information that stood out to me were number one on generally like technical recruiters or talent acquisition using AI to generate interview questions. I think that is fairly new, especially when it's hard to assess for technical skills. And so I'm interested in learning more about that. And then I was surprised by the stat that only 36% of devs are not interested in a managerial position because I would have assumed the stat would be frankly way higher. And so that's an interesting insight, particularly as many companies are struggling with career ladders and creating paths for managerial versus non-managerial positions. The percentage is much lower than I would have expected.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see the perception of this number because I've seen a few articles around this particular topic of career path and expectation, and I think we think it's a lower number, but it was perceived a little bit differently, like outside of the tech space. So that's also something I found funny about this particular number. So we'll stop sharing right now. And as we dig deeper, so I think the report talked about priorities for this year for tech recruitments. I know that there is like the top priorities highlighted in this report. Arpan, what do you think this report teaches about those priorities for this year?
Sure. Yeah. When I look at the report, from what I understand, it seems like there's going to be some continued pressure to do more with less, smaller teams, smaller budgets. There seemed to be a continued emphasis on sourcing internationally, which is a muscle that's been developed and continues to be developed. And then I think that third is really just to focus on evaluating soft skills, not just technical skills, which is harder to do. So how do you really test for communication and collaboration versus can you simply write code or solve this algorithm problem? I think continues to be a trend. What's most interesting to me is the combination of these things. So as you have a more global remote workforce and can standardize on maybe the basics of some technical tasks, how do you evaluate soft skills when cultural context is so different and collaboration can be so different? And so getting really, really good at that in a more global remote workforce is sort of interesting and top of mind for me, particularly as recruiters are pressured to do less. The other one that I thought was interesting is focusing on like upskilling. And so we've heard from a lot of folks that internal mobility is also a topic. And so how do we better understand particularly for larger companies, like the true like breadth, depth among the talent on our team to find basically roles for them internally before sort of hiring externally. And how do we effectively connect the dots between those two was something that's something that also stood out.
And Matthias, Ashley, how does what Arpan share about this priority relates to what you see for your team or what you see in your environment?
Yeah. So definitely +1 to what Arpan said. So for our teams, and one of our company pillars over really the last, year and a half is to focus on, efficient growth. And yes, this includes, having a lean team and being very deliberate about our capacity. But this is also creating more of that cross-functional collaboration, or to what Arpan mentioned, internal mobility moves to really support, other divisions that are typically, out of one scope. So I mean, as a result, what we're seeing, this collaboration has organically evolved into, skills development opportunities where team members have also been able to apply into their core roles. So it's been a nice surprise, I would say, as it's evolved.
Yeah, I think we will talk also like are there action that this insight inspired you to take for your team or like any recommendation? But before that, Matthias, do you have like any reaction about what was shared before?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting to see in this report, and it's the focus on stability. Yeah, seek stability and clear directions and the opportunity to learn new skills. Has been something, especially in the world that I'm operating as a startup and scale-up world, where we have seen lots of layoffs, lots of insecurity, a lot of organizations fail over the time that people consider, and especially when it comes to comp and ben, right? The equity piece, the zero interest growth rates, the valuation are dropping. So there's lots of that has an effect on also big tech, but also on the smaller organizations like that. And so seeking stability is something that actually played well in our hands because we were quite a sustainable setup from that perspective, even if we're a Series B startup. And that was actually much more received. We even had bounce back hires, like people that left us for a certain period of time and then said, look, for some reason that is not working out, but I would love to come back because you look like, or you appear to be an area where you are stable and we can still learn and grow. And so that is definitely something that I can double down on and experienced over the last couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, is it a big shift? Like, is it a sudden big shift that you've observed, or is it something that has been growing over the past 2-3 years?
I mean, what is interesting though is the salary, right? How much has the salary expectation adjusted to a certain extent? Because if you earn a high salary or you have a good comp and ben package, but an unsecure environment, people have a different perspective. I think in Germany, especially, we have seen or had a long conversation of what does that do for companies to move to big enterprise or corporates even instead of tech startups or scale-ups, right? And so we have seen a notion there that people are looking, especially who are in the career, in the phase of their career where they have a family already, right? Stability is more important than if they are very much in their beginning of their career and single.
Yeah, and I don't know, like behind my question, that was also like ever since the COVID period, where also we've seen some big shifts. I know people were looking already for more stability, more work-life balance as well. Is this something that's now it's mandatory right now? Like it's obligation to cover this topic in a recruitment process or in an employer branding, I guess. Process.
Yeah, what we have seen recently is that people tend to not reject offers anymore just because of the salary, but the cultural aspect, right? Do I connect to that culture? What are the shared beliefs, right? And this is something we most of the time haven't focused on so much because it was like, yeah, I want to just, I jump for another 5 or 10K here and there, or a better position because I cannot grow internally. But suddenly that cultural piece or the set of the flexibility that organizations offer is actually attracting people. Yeah. And I keep on seeing this more and more, especially now when the market is kind of, offering multiple options now, and it's not this employer focused as it was before.
I see. Ashley, do you have, based on maybe the report and your own experience, have you seen changes in the expectations of candidates, or do you foresee changes coming this year, especially in tech candidates, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're slowly starting to see right now is that, candidates are, acquiring AI skills, and they are actually leveraging this, in their interview process. And the way that, we're messaging this out, regardless if it's to a developer or somebody in recruiting, is that, hey, you know what, like we should be able to, level up ourselves, with AI. And it's not just to, again, enhance, our productivity, but again, leverage it to really understand, our talent pool and who truly has, that aptitude, right, to be able to solve challenges a developer or even an analyst could. So again, it's still very early. We're still in its infancy, I would say, with adopting these approaches, but we're seeing a bunch of, genuine interest and curiosity behind it at Databricks.
Do you already see about the approaches you mentioned, interesting ones that you feel are worth digging into, interesting approaches too?
Yes. And it's really across the company as well too, not one department over another.
Okay. And actually, I like to focus on a trend that I find particularly interesting. So a few years back, we saw a leap in the number of companies hiring developers from non-academic background. For instance, I think the number was like double between 2021 and 2022. And today it's very much something that recruiters do. I think it's a question maybe for Arpan. What do you think the benefits for recruiters of hiring people that have non-academic background now? Why people are doing it more and more?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what we've seen actually at CoderPad and from what we've heard from the other talent acquisition folks, I think it's less about like pedigree and more about resume. And resumes can often be a nice crutch. They can use to be like a filtering mechanism. Did you work at the right company or do you have the right skills? But often they miss the mark in terms of actually going after like, is this person a good fit for my team? And oftentimes you miss candidates who would be good otherwise. And so in the context of sort of like sourcing internationally and looking for the right fit for your team as opposed to the right true, like I have the checkbox on the skill sets, and the resume can actually just be a barrier in those environments. And so we see a lot more talk about, frankly, ditching the resume in talent acquisition circles and trying to figure out like what that actually looks like, because it requires some sort of retooling of your internal processes. And I think ultimately it's just you end up, if you're able to do that, I think the idea is you'll have sort of more robust teams, because development and product development is in fact a team sport than otherwise.
Yeah. Who do you think this skills-based hiring approach benefit most? Like, is it really just for the candidates or for the company? Like,
I mean, I think it benefits kind of everyone. The candidates feel like they have a fair shot, right, at getting a job that they believe they might not be qualified for. There are good studies on this stuff, number one. And I think it actually benefits the teams too, because oftentimes technical teams, and one of the stats in the reports was really around like, can this person actually do the job regardless of like what their pedigree is, and do their job as a combination of technical and soft skills, because I think you want to work with highly competent individuals who frankly make the team better, because it is a team sport. And so I think everyone benefits from this sort of approach.
Yeah, I agree. I think, so I'm quoting Matthias from a previous webinar that we ran, and you were saying like that moving from a pedigree to a skills first approach is new, but it's the right move. Like I'm changing a little bit the quote, but that's basically what you say for keeping the pace in the job market today. So do you think it's easier, and also like we have to do it now because like in this job market we cannot do otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, look, something that is said in between the lines, but we need to highlight this is biases, right? Human beings are very biased in what they have been through, first impressions, similarity biases, you name it, right? And I think removing the resume is just allowing us as human beings to actually judge or assess people based on what they actually can bring to the job instead of looking at the past and the companies that have been working with. Especially what we see in the Berlin market, the titles that people have these days does not tell you anything about how qualified they are. Yeah. And if you look at a very global approach in hiring, how do you know which company is good, bad, what title is good, what is bad, right? So it doesn't say anything anymore. And especially, I'm referring to academia here. I did a skill-based hiring workshop last week, and what you can see is the predictor of future job performance, right? We want to hire people because we want to predict what their future job performance looks like. And job experience is the weakest predictor of future job performance. And we keep on ignoring science and academia that actually tells us like, hey, this is the way you should actually do and go about it. So structured interviewing, work sample tests, et cetera, right? I think in the end of the day, I think Arpan said this nicely. If you look at the engagement surveys, the disengagement of the global workforce that currently exists is part of this problem is because people are hired into roles that where they cannot leverage their skills as much, or where they don't have any opportunity to grow into the area where they can be the best versions of themselves, right? And because of the broken recruitment practices that we have, and I think especially what Arpan mentioned before is it's now super interesting to see how can we assess social skills. And I don't want to give the answer away, but like, there's things like pair programming, right? Why is this not used, especially for more senior roles, to actually use that? Because it's a combination of social skills of how do I fit in a team, but also how do I approach a problem, right? And so many times we are so obsessed about those coding challenges in top funnel, and that's something where I also think these times are over, to be honest, because AI can solve them within a minute, right? So I think one of the biggest impacts that you have seen with AI coming up is, we can throw away all of our coding challenges that we have if you don't use a proper tool that actually flags this. But we shouldn't fight AI so much. We should look for engineers that use AI and are great in prompt engineering to actually solve complex problems. And that's the way of how we should shift our assessment approach going forward.
Yeah, I think that also mean been like bridging the gap, if there is any gap, between hiring managers, recruiters, working really like together for recruiters to have the closer approach to what the real job is, and hiring manager helping them figure that out. I see Arpan and Ashley nodding during your intervention. That, like, do you have anything you would like to share or add? Maybe Ashley and then Arpan.
Just a plus one. I mean, for us here, like throughout our interview training and hiring processes, going back to the structured interview plan, like we equip our interviewers to ask those behavioral and situational questions, such as, tell me about a time a project went off track. How did you get there? What did you do to address it, right? And based on the candidate's response, and we're able to see if they're able to take their ownership or really be able to be receptive towards feedback, throughout the process, which again is a very positive indicator for those soft skills. And again, this fits into skills-based hiring because it can really illustrate if that candidate has the aptitude to really grow into that role, or even within the company as well too, depending on which stage of growth the company is at.
Yeah. And Arpan, did you have anything to add, maybe?
No, I wanted to come back to a bit on how do you actually like throw away the resume when you're just trained to do that over and over again, and systems and processes are like built around that. And so just looking for some perspective from our panelists here on how they've approached that, or what are some of the conversations that they've had internally around some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, look, we if you want to ditch the resume, we did this with one role at the moment. We used the tool, right? We looked at hard skills and said, look, we do a job knowledge test up front in top funnel. And it was crazy that a lot of people told me, Matthias, don't do this because the bounce rate will be tremendous. Now I
Mm-hmm.
got a bounce rate of 8%. 8%, yeah. So 92% of the people actually submitted this because we had a messaging around we want to remove biases, we do not care about where you worked and the resume and so on. And people bought into this assessment approach and said, look, this sounds reasonable. And I feel like if the job knowledge test is reflecting, and it was just a 20 minutes, right? So I'm not talking about 3 hours test up front before you talk to anyone, right? So really 20 minutes. And it was very interesting because now what we then looked at the results of the people that moved forward, the one that got hired in the end scored the highest, which meant we actually, with that score, predicted future job performances without even looking at all of the interviews and the work sample test that followed after. So literally the test was so good and with just functional skills that it actually predicted the hire, very much top funnel. And I think this is kind of an approach where you'd be like, look, I totally get it that we want to talk to people first, we want to engage them. But if people get your messaging and your reasoning of why you do certain things, I would rather invest 20 minutes, learn something out of this, get the results shared, get some learning opportunities after, and I even get feedback. Yeah, I think something that we haven't discussed about. Candidate experience is so broken around the world, and going to skill-based hiring allows also us to give better feedback to candidates. And if we create that learning opportunity for everyone in that process, company-wise, candidate-wise, then people will leverage this. People will talk about it, and people then also say, "Have I been assessed fairly without biases?" Then they join, and they are more than happy to actually spend some time up front before they even talk to people. That is at least my experience, and this is something where I also had to, talk with other practitioners about. Oh, but for top funnel test, never, 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 Matthias. But at the same time, I have to say, also to be very honest here, I had a lot of inbound applications. So I got a lot of traffic in, which then allowed me to really do this because otherwise I would have not been able to handle that. If you just have one or two or five people applying, you might reconsider this, right? And you take the time to interview people. So it literally also depends a bit of the inflow of candidates.
Ashley, I'd love your perspective too.
Yeah, funny enough, we actually did something pretty similarly, not at Databricks, but at a previous company as well too. And at first there was a skepticism behind, these top of funnel tests. But when we were leveraging it, we did have to be, very, very thoughtful again about which pools we wanted to apply this to. Again, we wanted to have more senior candidates try to take this or more junior ones to really assess that drop-off rate. And we started off with the more, junior talent, and I'm not saying, super early in career, but again, those who do have, 5 years or so of experience. But yeah, we tried it with them, and yeah, very similar. I would say, yeah, our drop-off rate, it was a little bit higher, if I recall correctly, is between like 12 and 13% at the time. And then once we noticed, hey, that wasn't too bad, then we started applying it for more, managerial positions. And to Matthias's point, it's really just saying like why you're doing it, just really driving that. I felt really actually helped with the adoption. And yeah, we saw that it did have some very positive indicators, especially for some like the middle manager roles as well too.
And so talking about further about skills evaluation, so we talked about soft skills. How do you think it fits in the skills-based hiring process?
Yeah, so I would say it's key in regards to being able to identify what is, the candidate's potential, right? What is that predictor? Like, what is that indicator for them to be successful overall, like whether it's in their role or within that company. So,
Matthias, you have a perspective on it?
Yeah. What we did, so we are just not doing skill-based hiring. We also move further to skill-led organization. That means we have a skill-led career framework as well. So we literally broke down the skills as core skills, we call them now. We kind of, translated from our DNA and values a bit. And we identify those core skills as skills that apply, are mandatory for everyone at our company at Amplify. So it's like effective communication, relationship building, problem solving, right? Like skills that are helping you to be good in your job, no matter in which area, right? And what I found very interesting is that when you do a top funnel test, right? with the test that we did not assess effective communication, right? So, and in the interviews then going forward, we have seen a couple of dropouts because of exactly that, right? The effective communication piece. And so you need to be mindful about when in the process do you want to assess which skills, right? And I think this is then something, should you do a top funnel test with social skills if possible, or is this even possible? Or you just focus on functional skills and then test the interviews, in the interviews, the social skills? That is pretty much up to you, right? But this is something that we have seen where we went for functional skills and then assessed the social skills in the interview pieces.
Okay. So I see time is running. I would love to discuss this further, but we have also another hot topic around AI and good insights that were shared in the report. So investing in AI was identified as top priority for recruiter this year. Are recruiter looking for more efficiency with that investing in AI? I don't know, Ashley, maybe?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, so I feel like in regards to, AI, I feel like this is something that we should be, investigating more, but maybe shouldn't be, fully applied to the hiring process. Yes, like for now, AI should be used to identify and create efficiencies throughout the interview process, but I don't think it should necessarily be a vehicle to make hiring decisions. Like, for example, it is great for note taking, and it can be helpful with reducing the amount of time it takes an interviewer to submit their feedback, which we know it's been, a challenge for decades now. Or what we're seeing now, it's how can AI be applied with scheduling automation to increase, recruiting coordination productivity. However, similar to what Thais said earlier, like I wouldn't use AI to even, scan resumes, right, to make a decision about advancing candidates in the interview process, because it's something, as we know, it can breed biases, right? And we don't want to really encourage that loop and everything.
Yeah, are there what, according to you, are the most interesting approaches to use AI in the recruitment process?
Yeah, so as of right now, I would say like really improving like the interviewer's experience, right? I think for us, like writing effective feedback is such a hot topic for right now. So again, how are we going to try to, build tools and be on the forefront of that? Because we know it's something that's a huge challenge, especially when it comes down to, feedback that is compliant in our systems, right? So how do we aggregate this and also, really identify like what is an effective interviewer as well too, based on the feedback they've written. So I think that's a pretty exciting application. So
I love that you're talking about like improving the experience of the candidate, also using AI, for instance. So in the survey, for instance, there is a number that struck me because it seems to me like a paradox on how AI tools are used by developer today. It's like around 70% almost are using AI as part of their job daily, and 60% say they like to use it more. And despite this, you have only like 8% of the recruiters or hiring managers say that they encourage the use of AI during an interview, technical interview, or the interview process. And at the same time, also developers say that they, like a third of them say they consider that cheating using AI in interview. So it's like kind of a paradox in the way they use it, the way they perceive it in the recruitment process, and how far from the reality this is. I don't know, like, why do you think it's not reflecting that well in the hiring process? I don't know who
yeah.
wants.
Oh yeah, I'll just quickly jump into that one since
Go.
it's very, very top of mind as well too. But yes, I would say there is that paradox because it's still very, very early to understand like how we want to, leverage AI as well. Because we'll just use the, common example of, developers, applying it to their coding examinations. It's like, yes, they can, increase their outputs, but what's more importantly is like their how, like what is their approach? How do they want to apply it, right? Which again does, sit in between like the ethical piece, but at the same time can still, test those soft skills as well. So it has to be, I think, a balance of both to be fully effective.
So, Arpan, what is your perspective on this particular point of data
Yeah,
insight?
I mean, I think I think it's interesting to have the dichotomy of like AI is being used to actually like pass top of funnel assessments, but top of funnel assessments can potentially be harder and harder to game, coupled with the desire to use it. So mostly, I think we're still at the early stages of adopting AI in kind of the technical recruiting cycle. And you know, I think we still need to collect examples from the community of how it's being used and share those sort of more broadly as we evolve into sort of this new era.
How do you think we could like empower better, I don't know, recruiters to, like it seems to be a long process. Is there a way, an approach to better implement AI in the recruitment process starting now? Like a
Yeah.
small step.
One example that I think comes to mind is one of the things we hear is a technical team and leveling up their technical knowledge, particularly as they're on calls with software engineers. And so if you need to understand a technology a bit better to screen out or have a conversation with someone who's technical and when you're not, I think like ChatGPT or AI can be really, really useful in those conversations. So you could theoretically look at a resume, you could look at, you know, what someone says. Do a quick learning for yourself on you know, ChatGPT, understand the technical terms and sort of more layman's knowledge, and then use that to have a more thorough conversation with the software engineer when you're not technical yourself. So I think like upskilling and learning development, not just for the engineering team, but particularly for talent acquisition, is actually a very interesting use case to get to a better signal.
Yeah. And what's your take, Matthias, on this particular topic?
Yeah, we we see at the minute that I think a lot of HR tech vendors have implemented AI recently, and I think when we go into this topic, which what Ashley mentioned, interview intelligence, like note taking, transcription, we are finally arrived after decades of taking notes while having an interview. That somehow we can focus on candidates and ask questions and don't need to write anything down because first of all our handwriting is probably so poor that we don't even read it afterwards, and second of all our mind after 5, 6, 7, 8 interviews gets very blurry of who said what, when, and how, right? So I think this is a huge game changer, and what these softwares then can do is literally they have an AI assistant on top of it to go through all of the transcribed data of these interviews, and that makes it super cool. Like you can do comparison, candidate comparison, you can filter that, etc. So there's a lot of that you see within HR tech that makes this meaningful. I think I have another solution where we can just upload the job ad and then suddenly the system tells us which assessment approach we should use based on the job description, right? So this is wonderful, right? So it helps us to make better decisions and faster decisions. But of course, as a spoiler alert, what was said in this panel already, critical thinking, yeah? Don't take everything for granted that you can get out of the system and still check this further, because so and so many times you see, yeah, this is nice, but that's not the reality, right? And so that's why I'm also totally with the people to say AI will enable us to be faster and more efficient, but it's not making the decision in the end.
Yeah. As we are talking about like concrete example, and before we move to the Q&A session, so what would be like one action or insight that this report you think could or should inspire? Ashley?
Yeah, so similar to what Arpan said earlier, but if your company has, you know, some form of development fund, you know, use it to, you know, invest in some AI skills, right? And again, it's not as if we need to be, you know, experts, you know, in AI over this coming year, because as we know, AI evolves every single day, right? But getting some foundational skills, being at least to explore, test it out on maybe one pain point of your day or maybe one repetitive task to see if there's something that you can apply to that to make your job more efficient.
Arpan?
No, I think the panelists covered pretty much everything. I think that's interesting and valuable. So I don't have anything more to add at this point.
Perfect. Maybe more when we have the Q&A. Matthias, do you have anything like we could take out with us, like one thing that we should take from this?
I would encourage all of the recruiters to really use AI maybe even on their private computers, and pay the premium version. It's not that much. You're not getting bankrupt. But what I did, for example, to just give a concrete example, is I took a job ad from a company in Berlin for an engineer, and then I asked ChatGPT to not only design the interview questions, but also the coding challenge based on that job that they have seen, and then cluster the questions and the approaches that you can do on that question or that coding challenge in good, bad, and great. And even if you would do this just for the sake of your role that your hiring manager gives you, you get prepared, pretty good prepared in the intake meeting to say, look, this is what I've thought about. This is how we could assess this. This is what could be multiple different angles, depending a little bit what the focus is on the pair programming. And then you have a completely different conversation with your hiring manager, pretty much on what has been said already, not just to upskill your knowledge, but come up with better ideas that prompt your hiring managers in the right direction of what kind of skills and how they should assess these skills.
Yeah. Thank you all. So moving on to I'm reviewing the few questions that Adelaide has gathered for us from the audience. So I think there are a lot of different interesting topics around skills-based hiring, like still digging further into AI. For instance, as we are on the AI topic, maybe can you, so a question from Daniela, why do you think that we mentioned reviewing resume with AI wasn't a good idea, wasn't something you would recommend? Why it's not a good idea?
Yeah, of course. And I guess this is, very similar to Matthias's comment as well, too, is just because, resumes aren't always, the best, representation of someone's potential and their skills, right? And often when we, look at resumes, there are some people, if they're not appropriately trained, they're going to anchor on some areas and they're going to shape their own biases behind it as well, too. And again, if AI isn't, carefully used, again, it can breed, these biases, especially very early in the process. So that can really, limit our interviewing pool, which, again, would concern me a bit more about like the inclusivity of the process. So.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, we talked about transcription, and for interviews, there is a question from Sebastian asking how, so I don't know, I'm not yet aware of that regulation, but it's how transcription AI for interviews be used in Germany in regard of laws restriction. So are there any strong blockers to proceed with that?
Yeah, I love that question. Yes, we of course looked with our data protection officer into this topic, and it's a little bit about how your consent approach is. Do you have an active or a passive one? Do you just check the box and say, "No, I have your consent" by applying, right? Or do you like literally ask every interviewer or every candidate before they are interviewed to ask for their consent? We have chosen the latter one. So even if you have applied, it doesn't mean you get a default consent. We still ask you before the interview, hey, this is what this is all about, and please give our consent. If they don't have given the consent, the recording doesn't start, right? The transcription software doesn't start. The software always looks at the consent if they are both in, and then only then they jump in on that, right? So that helped a lot. I think there is also the topic of where's the data stored. These tools these days can also store the data without servers. So if that's maybe a question, but I don't want to get into detail, it is possible. It depends a little bit how much willing you are, because in the end of the day, it's a risk management approach, right? So how much risk are you willing to take, and how much benefit do you get out of? It's not risk-free, but it's also not such a big hurdle.
Okay. So I have another question on AI, but different topic, coming back to assessments and the case where candidates use AI to resolve assessments, which the person asking the question say it's considered cheating. How do we avoid it, or how do we deal with this topic? Maybe, I don't know, Arpan or Matthias?
Yeah, I mean, we can share some learnings from CoderPad. I think what we found at least is like language agnostic questions tend to be harder for folks or like ChatGPT or OpenAI to solve. Also, I think it's maybe less about can you copy and paste code, which you can detect all those signals, but more about follow-up questions on what was your approach to solving that problem. And so I think it's less about did you solve the problem and get a good score on this test? Yes, but there are things like copy paste detection. There are things like code playback that give you signals of suspicious activity. And if you were to follow that with some follow-up questions during the asynchronous screen that are more like multiple choice question or like write in text, for example, then you might get a better sense of like, did this person, copy paste or do they actually understand what they were writing? And those signals can help with some of the challenges we're seeing right now. So I think it goes back to like testing understanding and not testing can you memorize something, and that can also be done asynchronously too. And so you have to instrument your processes to do both now, as opposed to just passing sort of like a junior level test, which we know it can be solved.
Matthias, do you have a take on that as well?
Yeah, I think every advanced tool these days will detect the cheating, second screen activities, copy and paste. Yeah, so I think the tools are getting more advanced into that. So yeah, you can try that, but definitely how far does it get you? I think pretty much what I meant with the pair programming is like, and again, that's seconding second on what Arpan said is that you know what, if you are trying to solve a problem in real time, if you have a conversation in real time and then really understand their thought process behind their problem solving approach, I think this is then something where it gets key, and we're cheating super hard. Yeah, so the understanding part is then something, or also the effective communication part, right? It's the combination with soft skills, because AI can give you a lot of answers, but how well will AI help you to effectively communicate, right? This is something that is still tied to your skill set, and that's something that cannot be cheated on, right? So to that extent, I think what I have seen here is something that to say, look, that's why we have interviews still, and we will not get rid of interviews. Yeah, we will definitely ask the right questions, and also with the behavioral and situational, right? If you feel like somebody is reading a text out, yeah, I think we all have been there. You will kind of realize this, right? If this is like, look, is this fluent? Is this someone who can think on their feet, right? And then come up with this. What I also like is maybe scenario-based assessments, a work sample test. Don't let candidates prepare a lot beforehand. Just go deep dive with them and say, look, here are 3 scenarios in your day-to-day. How would you go about it? On the spot, right? If you have that experience, then you know how to tackle that, because most of the time you have seen those scenarios and experienced those scenarios in the past. And then, you know, how much would you then use AI for, right? You cannot keep up with that.
Yeah. Thank you for I like the concrete example. The follow-up question as well from Arpan was really interesting in like understanding the thought process. Ashley, you mentioned that as well. I know. I think that's key here. We have another question, so it's shifting back to skills-based hiring. And actually, it's a question from Kelly asking, how can a company that is currently very focused on educational requirements for hiring start to reshape their culture to be more open to skills-based hiring? Who wants to take this one? Chess?
Yeah, I can take this. So think about it like this. In the intake meeting, most of the time you ask your leaders, do you have a skill gap analysis of your team? Yeah. And most of the time they know, if they have not joined currently, they know what are the skills in my team, what makes a good performer look like, you know, what kind of key skills do they have, and maybe something where the team is unwilling to develop into or don't want to upskill. And that's why you need to open this role to actually close the skill gap through hiring. And I think this conversation in the intake meeting will also give you a little bit of a sense, okay, so what is it, right? Ask those questions. How do your performance review look like? Why are people not getting to that next level? How what kind of delivery problems do you have? What is missing that actually is key critical to be successful in your organization? And then people start coming up with these topics in these areas where you'd be like, okay, now let's double down on this. How do you then know if this is a missing skill? Do we have that expertise in your organization? Do we need somebody else to be invited here, right? To just understand, because multiple times I see this with startups, if they grow, they certainly need a skill that they don't have in their organization. And then what do you do, right? And then tools that already have a broader outreach and work with more sophisticated companies together, they can leverage the skill. They have this available and can help the company to bridge that gap or get some pointers on what you need to hire for. So this is very important. And another thing that I would say is learning culture and the upskilling. I think if you look how long skills last these days, these skills don't last that long. It's not like, oh, I acquire a skill and then I have the skill for at least the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. These times are over, right? So they are not lasting long. And everybody who wants to have an agile workforce that is actually able and capable of covering multiple different projects and to be successful and can adapt to changes, there you need to focus on the skill-based hiring, because this is not something that a degree will help you with, or especially in an environment that we come from a profession like talent acquisition. We don't have degrees, we don't have a certification of this is how talent acquisition looks like, right? And then suddenly oh, I know it all, right? We need to constantly develop ourselves and adjust ourselves in the market conditions, and this is why these skills are really, really important.
Yeah. Ashley, do we have a super interesting thing here? And
Yeah. So I agree with this approach, but something that we've done actually quite recently, we actually went backwards. We were able to, look at, who were these top performers, right? And then we were trying to find those little common threads, or what were those differentiators, amongst them. And we worked backwards to really define, what is great, or what were those gaps of that area of this individual or that group did develop on as well too. It wasn't easy. It did take a lot of time, right? But again, the key thing was identifying this and then really getting the leadership, or like the hiring teams, buy-in to really move forward with identifying these little skill gaps or areas that we can develop.
I really like your approaches where you say like it wasn't done in a day, like it takes time. It's step by step. Also like the step by step approach when you bring people together and then a question help like figuring out the next thing to do. So I really think that's important approach to skills-based hiring. Is really like, it seems a big thing to adopt, but at the same time, like it can be done easily and step by step, and it's like easier than ever today, I think. So yeah. I have a like adjacent question to that because it also addressed like biases. Skills-based hiring is also linked to that a little bit. From Mo, saying like a major concern in all areas of recruitment candidates feedback is biased hiring. Like a major concern is biased hiring. What are your organization doing to overcome this? And I think it's kind of, for me, it's kind of linked to this topic we just discussed. But are there specific initiative in your companies to address this topic?
Yeah, I would say when it comes into like feedback for candidates, again, feedback, it's never going to be 100% perfect, especially as you continue to grow and scale. But some of the initiatives that we've been focusing on is new interviewer training, but also retraining current interviewers. Let's just say if their, feedback is not, fully relevant to like the core roles, like competencies, for example. Like we created essentially like a framework for interviewers, for hiring managers, even recruiters as well too, to keep in their back pocket as a resource. But it clearly defines, what is, effective feedback. And it's factual, it's thorough, it's relevant, it's all succinct, right? And again, it doesn't, and we give examples of that too. And we want to always highlight, this is what feedback should not include. This is what it should. So being very, very clear with examples as well too, for them to follow, to write feedback.
Yeah. And more globally on like the recruitment process biases, do you have any other approaches that you would advise or that you have put in place already? I don't know, Matthias or anyone, or that you've heard of talking with your peers?
Yeah, I think training is always good. Now, it does not protect people from being or unbiased, right? You cannot unbiased human beings. I think that's definitely not possible, but you can create the awareness. And I think also with the constant initiatives to focus on the right things, right? So remove resumes, yeah. And if you cannot remove resumes, blind CV screening, right? So that they see test results, but they don't see any names, right? So that we kind of make sure that we do as much as possible to make it as hard as possible to create biases. And that is a little bit the way you should go. And of course, the real role as a recruiter here, yeah, this is something that will add value to the business if you be aware that you tell people that their decision making is biased in certain areas so that they can move back and say, oh yeah, that's a good point, I didn't know about this, right? So many times in debrief meetings, if the VP comes in or a CTO and talks about the opinion of a candidate first, that should not happen. Let the others speak, and then the most senior person in the end speaks, right? And I think these are little tips and tricks that you can read about to come to a better decision.
Yeah, and I think this is where like having a structured interview process that you align on with your hiring manager actually helps. And if you have what are like the essential skills you're testing for with examples of what specifically you're looking for, then everyone can align on like what is the hiring bar that you're setting and actually speak the same language, which by itself can eliminate a lot of the implicit bias that could happen. So this is where structured interviews and looking for hard skills and soft skills in a similar fashion across individuals can help quite a lot.
I have, we have many questions coming. I don't think we'll be able to take them all because we are arriving almost at the end of the webinar. However, what we'll do is that we'll either get back to you, like all the people asking questions individually, or sometimes also write the contents answering all of your questions. So we take time and ask also our panelists their take asynchronously. So I will share one last question before the end. So there is a big, wider question, I would say, from Mo, who is looking forward to seeing what is evolving in the tech recruitment space. What do you think the direction of recruitment in general will be in the next 2 years? It's like a big open question for the end. Do you have any take on that? I know we've talked concretely about like what is happening right now. Do you think there is one trend that will last and that we need to keep following, maybe?
In tech recruiting, yeah?
Yeah. Or tech recruiting. Or in recruitment.
I think in general, what is with most of the trends that we see right now is, can we master the basics and be good about it? Like, for example, candidate experience. What we are implementing at the moment is a candidate portal tool. So if we get more candidate centered and treat candidates like they should be by, sharing the information up front, feeling like it's a delivery process on their application, like an Amazon delivery process where you exactly know in which step you are and what you need to do. This is what creates value. Yeah. And I think this is something that I think we can do a better job with, and also sharing better feedback after interviews, right? I think it's very basic, but I see a lot of organizations don't master the basics. Yeah. And that's why people have a bad experience. Yeah. And I think this is something that I would give as a feedback on that question. Yeah.
It's a good direction for the next year. Ashley, do you have a final comment on that?
Yeah, one quick comment in regards to, I guess, the evolution of, let's just say tech applications or recruiting in general, right? I think, what we should do is really be, attentive and keen with those who are earlier in their career right now, or those who are really entering the workforce, because we talk about, what their needs are and how, again, technology is going to be, changing so rapidly. And that's the group that's going to be using it and really going to be setting the tone over the next, 10 to 15 years. So anyone that has a, robust intern or new grad program, listen to those folks, because they're going to be sharing a lot of insight about really everything that we're discussing. So.
Thank you. So Matthias has to leave us because we are a little bit over time. Thanks again to you all sharing your insight. It was a really interesting discussion today. For everyone in the audience, so the webinar was recorded. You will receive the recording by tomorrow. Thank you again for your time, and talk to everyone soon. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.